seminar on Kalari Shashi this morning is precisely the fact that this great martial art is getting finally the attention it deserves on the national stage. This is the 10th National Kalari Shashi Championship. It seems somewhat ironic for a practice that has been around for possibly 3,000, maybe 4,000 years. Certainly, if you go back in history, the first references to Kalari Shashi can be found in the ancient Sangam literature from the 3rd century BC onwards, which is about 2,500 years ago. And so you can be sure that the sport or the martial art existed well before that. So let us say 3,000 years at least of history, and we're only having the 10th national championship this year. In fact, if you really want to go back to Hindu mythology, it is said that when Parashurama created the state of Kerala by throwing his axe into the Arabian Sea, that he also picked 21 brave men and built them each a kalari to train the people in martial arts. So if you want, it goes even further back than those 2,500 years. There were 21 gurus, 4 clans. That's how the whole practice began. And of course, Kalari is the combat arena. It's also the battlefield. And Payata simply means something you practice repeatedly. So that Kalari Payata is the place where you practice martial arts. Is the art where you practice your martial arts on the Kalari, on the field. Now, we had, I must say, a great martial tradition in Kerala. It was extremely common to be asked to send your children when they were about 7 years old. Every Nayar family would send a 7-year-old boy off to a Kalari to be trained. And this culture, sort of like the akharas of the north, but much earlier and in a much more sophisticated way, was widely practiced. The present form of Kalari Shashi seems to have been settled around the 6th century during an extended period of conflict between the Jayaraj and the Cholas. Those two dynasties were often fighting with each other. The Keralites and the Tamils, if you want in today's terms, but the Jayaraj and the Cholas both developed very strongly their traditions in Kalari Shashi. And of course, it was around this time, no one has the exact date, but roughly 5th century, that the South Indian monk Bodhidharma, according to some legends, was the 3rd son of a Brahmin king. Well, the only Brahmin kings were the Pallavas, so he must have been a Pallava prince, traveled off to China by sea and by land, and he went to the famous Shaolin Temple. I don't know how many of you watch Kung Fu movies, but there's a very famous movie called the Shaolin Temple and the sequels. And he is the one who introduced martial arts to China, bringing the arts and secrets of Kalari Shashi to China, and thereby giving birth to karate, kung fu, and the various Jackie Chan movies. So if you really want to understand where the success of Chinese kung fu movies come from, you've got to go back to this Pallava prince in the 5th century called Bodhidharma. Now, I talked about how the boys were sent off for martial arts training, but it was more than just martial arts training. It was also a code of life. Elements from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali were actually taught and incorporated into the practice. Even theatrical moves from the Natya Shastra were taught in Kalari Shashi. And as a result, dance forms were influenced by Kalari Shashi, and Kalari Shashi influenced dance. It was a two-way traffic. For example, in Kathakali, it was often